Heart out to you. All right, now we get on with the question.
What is your question? Quickly, when is your next convention appearance? When and where? And then also, I have real quick. What would Optimus Prime say to Eeyore? So the question is, what would Optimus Prime say to Eeyore?
Well, hello, Eeyore. Yeah, that's my name. Why are you so down? Well, I'm not down. I'm just not kind of up. Well, what's your name? My name is Eeyore. What's yours? My name is Optimus Prime. Oh.
All right, we have a question right over here. Yes, sir, I'll hold the mic.
All right. Mr. Cullen, I'm one of those Generation 1 fans of yours. I just want you to say the most famous line in the movie, if you know what that is. One shall stand, one shall fall, just one for me, please.
One shall stand, one shall fall.
I'm coming down the front end over here.
Yes, sir.
Hello, sir. My name is Travis. I flew from Pennsylvania to come here. So first off, thank you for doing this. This was on my bucket list. And thank you for other characters in addition to Eeyore and Optimus. I've listened to your voice in cartoons all over the place. My question is kind of in reference to a guest appearance you did on a cartoon called Megas XLR. Has anyone here seen it? He plays a bad guy. So in reference to that, if this has happened, I apologize, Transformer fan. Would you play an evil Optimus in an alternate reality, where like the Autobots are the bad guys and the Decepticons are the good guys, and Optimus is
Evil Optimus, yes or no?
Well, yeah, Optimus has been in situations where he hasn't actually been himself. And he's had to regain composure and come back to who he is. He was capable of losing his temper, flying off the handle, and in some cases, causing injury to innocent people, but it wasn't the real Optimus. There were in his brain. So he is quite capable of having an electronic dysfunction of some kind. You may see that someday. But would I do it willingly? No. I would find it great difficulty in trying to stray away for any length of time without the basic principles of what Optimus stands for. And I believe in those above everything else, so without getting into a whole spiel about that, but I hope that answers your question.
I'll get to you here in the front, sir, but first there's a super fan among us who really has been dying to ask a question of Mr. Optimus Prime. Peter Cullen. It's this guy right here, Nick Sanchez. I'm sure you have a question you want to ask. Go ahead.
Actually, I was going to kind of piggyback off that question. We've seen Optimus change a bit. Well, I mean, perhaps. I think over the last 30 years, Optimus has kind of changed somewhat in character. In a sense of, well, I guess it's one more towards the movies, but where he's, for example, shooting humans. Like for the movie where he's kind of trying to protect Mark Wahlberg and stuff. Or even when he goes after Megatron and finishes him off. Do you feel that Optimus has changed at all? Or do you think that it's evolving?
That's an interesting question. Of course, I have no idea what the Transformer Age of Extinction. I haven't seen it yet. It comes out next week. He seems to know more about it than I do. Whether or not Optimus is capable of all those things, you'll have to stay tuned and see for yourself. But has he changed over the years? Certainly Generation 1 indicates that, going from a Kenworth to a Peterbilt is a major change. And we can go to further than that in the recent truck transformations, if I may. But I look at that and say, if you're going to transform into something, why does it have to stay the same? You can take an automobile into a truck shop and a perfectly classical automobile and come out with a hot rod. It's just a matter of metal on metal and bending and twisting and so I think conceivably there's going to be changes, there's going to be new weaponry, and anything else that these great imaginative people come up with. It doesn't surprise me. It really doesn't surprise me. What are we going to see next? The sword of freedom, the sword of judgment. We're going to see a lot of things change. Hopefully everybody likes them. Hope I like it.
Thanks, Nick. Yes, sir, what is your question?
Dylan Bullander, Mr. Cullen.
Sir?
Quick question, is there a certain voicers that you feel you have the best dynamic with? I mean, we heard you as Ironhide, Avenger, and Optimus Prime, obviously, over here as well as you are, but is there someone that you feel you've had the best rapport with in the studio or how it's come across either in a movie or a television show?
Well, there's without question, I think Optimus Prime is the essential success story behind that. He translates over, all ages, from children all the way up to guys, our age and, my age. But nonetheless, the answer would be, yeah, I think Optimus Prime overall has had the most generous influence on me. His ability to relate to all those people in different ways is ultimately the most important experiences that I've ever had. And certainly in my career, I don't think any other voice that I've accomplished has accomplished anything like Optimus has. But Optimus isn't really me, it's who wrote him and who was responsible for making him come out of me. So that's most important to me. It's a very, very mystical, spiritual thing to me.
We have another question over here. Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Douglas Everett. My question is actually kind of a two-part. For one, how does it feel to be a character that is so influential with so many people? And do you ever have your Kurt Cobain moment where you tire of, I don't know if it would be right, if I could be classified as your greatest, achievement? Do you ever just get tired of Optimus Prime and you're like, oh God, I wish somebody would just say Voltron or Igor?
The second part of your question, absolutely not. I've never tired of doing him. Based upon the first part of the question answer would be because when I discovered the success and the influence that Optimus Prime has had over the many years and how many lives he's influenced, changed for the better in many cases, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to know that in my life I've been able to do something that has accomplished such a positive end result in individual cases. Not only to be able to know that there's a satisfied audience out there that have took in Generation 1 cartoons all the way through the movies, but we're genuinely entertained by it. There's a great sense of satisfaction, which gives you a sense of joy, of happiness that you've accomplished something in your life in your later stage. Let's face it, I never knew the success of Transformers Generation 1 when I was doing it. Nobody did. And I was young then. But we were not privy to to fan mail. We didn't have the internet, and you know, we didn't even have cell phones. So no one had an idea. You did not have a temperature gauge to determine, you know, how hot or cold you were. And to be a little more inside with that, you know, when I was bumped off as Optimus in '86 in the animated film, I concluded, because I had no idea what the audience responses were of him, I thought I was being axed because I sucked. You know, that's the way they got rid of soap opera stars back in those days. They just killed them off. You know, some haggard, you know, nasty witch, you know. You know, Harry, I think Madeline, what's her name? You know, she's getting really cranky on the set. You know, she's causing people a lot of trouble. Bump her off in the next one. Well, that's pretty much what I would think, you know, about how they got rid of you in those days, and, you know, make room for other characters, fine. But the year I discovered, you know, it was at a BotCon somewhere in Rochester, New York, and that's where I became appraised of his success and how much he meant to a lot of people. I was stunned by that. It took me by surprise. And it was a very humbling experience that continued to this day. I've never taken it for granted. And I know I've answered your question, but it's also an opportunity for me to tell you that there's not a day that goes by that I'm not involved in Transformers that I would think or take it lightly. And I fight for his integrity and his values. And I have, and I will continue to.
Amen.
Yes. How is it working with Frank Welker once again? And if you could ever convince him to actually start coming to conventions with you, would you?
You bet I would. Frank Welker is one of the icons in the voiceover world. He's not only a great voiceover actor, but he was a brilliant, before he gave up on camera, he worked with Elvis Presley in early movies. He's done stand-up comedy. He's worked as a guest in front of roasts, you know, where he would impersonate Muhammad Ali and all these other people in front of guys like Bob Hope, the top comedians in the world. And Frank was capable of doing that and entertaining these people. And if you ever get to see him on the internet, going back to some of those old roasts, you get an opportunity to see one of the most incredible, brilliant actor, voiceover actor, comedian actors. It's a wonderful experience to be able to work with Frank. And of course, to be able to do a convention with him would be that would be a high point. That would be a bucket list. And I hope it does happen. We've talked about it several times, and he almost said, might go to England. Maybe they have some of those Optimus Prime double IPA. Anyway, I would love to see Frank and I work together. We did a Carl Weathers. You know who Carl Weathers is? Yeah. Carl Weathers directed a little video that he did, and Frank and I were being interviewed. And Carl Weathers at the end of it said, "Oh man, we could go on the road with it. You guys are lightning, man. You guys are hot. Well, man, you guys gotta have your own show." I don't think so. We're just gonna do this thing. The microphone. Okay, but we're gonna do a convention one day. Hey, Chris, right?
Nick Sanchez, I'm sure there's something else you'd like to add.
I would also like to see you do conventional football.
I'm glad you said that. You're starting to remind me of a quarterback for the New York Jets.
I hope that's a good thing.
His last name is Sanchez. You look a lot alike.
I'll take that.
All right, another non-football question over here. Football question.
Now, over the years, in various articles or online, they say, you know, you're the golden voice of Hollywood, you know, a voiceover. I've seen that. You know, people have mentioned that, you know, your voice, and you hear Peter Cullen, they recognize, you know, the roles that you've done. What influenced you to get into the business? Who or what influenced you to get that start?
Well, I had an aptitude for doing sounds when I was a kid. Sounds, you know, I worked on a dairy farm when I was in my youth, carrying milk pails, and then when everything got quiet and all the cows were munching down, I discovered one day I stood at the head of all the stalls in two sections, and I stood at the corner, and I made a loud noise, and they all looked up. And I said, I've got their attention. So I went into something, I think at the time, it was probably in the 50s. And so I had a stick in my hand and I pretended it was like a crop, you know, and I want your attention, please. I love you. You're all looking up like that. And I walked down slapping my leg with this stick, and I walked up with one of the cows, you know, they're all looking at me as I'm walking by, their heads are following me. I started one, you know, and got back, and I'm that cow's been looking like, what is going on? And I keep on walking. And talking all the way, and I turn around, and I slap my leg at the elbow, scared me again. So I used to do that quite often. I mean, I didn't need people. I just needed an audience of cows. So I could do it with cats too, or dogs, or, you know. So I spent a summer one year just doing dogs, cats, horses, cows, pigs, chickens, whatever else I could find. And that's pretty much about how it started. And then I started doing people in grade school, getting kicked out of classes. Did that to high school, getting kicked out of classes. Impersonating teachers, impersonating principals, getting kicked out of classes. That's it. My dear gal Brandy, she said, I used to do the same thing. I said, yeah, did you go to detention? She said, I didn't care. I'd make detention laugh. Well, we weren't allowed to speak in my detention. What can they take away from you, you know? Your weekends. Anyway, I kept it going on my life. I started getting good at it. And well, let's say I could get away with it. That's where it was, right? Yeah.
We have another question over here.
Okay, I have a silly, kind of a silly question. Can Optimus sing?
I don't think other Autobots think he does. I don't know. I wouldn't even know what kind of song he would sing. Fly me to the moon.
We would completely support that album. I was thinking more Optimus is the blues.
We have another question over here.
You were doing your sound effects while ago on Optimus that reminded me a lot of Charlie Callis back in the 50s and 60s. Who of the great voices of the past do you think of when you think of I said the greats like Charlie Callis, the ones that stand out? You being our voice hero, who stands out in your mind?
Jonathan Woodard. For many reasons, you can combine sound effects with characters. And I've received a couple of calls from Jonathan Winters over the years, and I would not know who. I'll tell you a little story. We had some heavy winds in Hollywood, and enough to blow the spark arrestor up the chimney. And he had called me. I'd just come down from the roof. My wife would say, "There's somebody on the phone who wants to talk to you about the chimney."
Yeah, hello? Well, this is Tom Parkins over here at Chimney A1.
Yeah. Well, did I call you?
Oh, I don't know if you called us, but we found out tonight that you got a chimney restoration.
Yeah. Yes, I do. When could you do it?
Well, we can probably get up there tomorrow afternoon.
Okay, that'd be great.
You know, one thing you want to do is save us a lot of trouble. Why don't you get up on the roof there and tell us what kind of bolts they were using for the strap on?
I'm not sure what I'm looking at.
Well, you know, you come off that arrestor.
Yeah.
You got holes there. If we just not how big them holes are, we can save a lot of money for it. Otherwise, we're going to have to put the thing down, get in the truck, and go get all that stuff.
Oh, all right.
Take measure tight, make sure you get everything. Okay.
I come back and say,
Yeah. Are you there? Yeah, I'm here, Mr. Cullen.
okay, the width of the hole is like 3/16 of an inch.
All right. What, the holes in slang in the strap, or is that in the brick? The brick got a thing in it, or did it just like an empty hole?
Well,
We need the measurement of that hole up in there, and so we can find out what kind of lead metal casing we're going to put in, so slide in that bolt through the strap.
all right. It's about 5/16.
Yeah, it's a big difference there, isn't it?
Well,
Hang on. You got to measure that for me, give me exactly, and tell me the space between the two holes on the strap.
oh, God, sir. Absolutely insane. He said, all right, I'll do it.
Are you? Hang on just a second, Mr. Cullen.
I got you, didn't I? Jonathan? Yeah, I got you, didn't I? Are you doing here? True story. Absolutely true.
We have another question back here.
Having been part of so many of the different Transformers series and the movies, how do you feel about how Hasbro keeps trying to kill Optimus off? Have they ever given you any good reasons as to why they keep trying to do that to him?
Well, they did it once successfully. But I'm still here.
You're coming over here and talk to Deadpool.
So I just want to ask, since we got like all these new movies coming out, and like we already Spider-Man, ask you questions. If you had the choice to play J. Jonah Jameson for the Amazing Spider-Man 3 or any future Spider-Man films, would you take it? And also, would you do us a favor and do a line from the new movie coming out next week. I think we're all about that.
The first part of your question, will you ask it again?
Okay, so we already had Amazing Spider-Man 2 come out, and they haven't gotten an actor for J. Jonah Jameson. Would you apply for the role if they ever had like an open audition for it?
No. No. Absolutely not. I got enough to handle without the background. Yeah.
And a line from the movies? No.
It's been so long since I've had that script in my hand. I'm fighting to try to remember one. I'm not revealing anything that way.
The lines from the last 5 minutes.
Okay. Stay back. Stay away. I will. Or I will.
Right over here, sir. Mr. Cullen, when you first saw Optimus Prime and they said you're going to do the voice for this character, did you have any kind of historical figures or anybody that you based your, like, to get that big booming voice? Like, what made you think that's Optimus Prime when you were, I guess, trying out voices?
It's a classic story that I told and I've been telling for years. The character number one is based on my brother Larry, who was a captain in the Marine Corps, probably Vietnam, and he was a decorated Bronze Star, Purple Hearts, and lost a lot of men in some very heavy battles in Vietnam. So saw a lot of life. When he returned home, he had the opportunity to live together through some strenuous times of my own. And when I was on my way to an audition, he said, Peter, first of all, you got to understand, Larry is much taller, much stronger, tougher, smarter, and in many cases funnier. And we were best friends. So when I went to the audition, he says, where are you going, Pete? And I said, Larry, I'm going to audition for a truck. He laughed just like you. And he said, a truck? That's great, Pete. Yeah, that's great, Pete. He said, but he's a hero truck. He's a hero truck, Pete. Yeah. And that's all I know. He said, well, if you're going to be a hero, be a real hero. Don't be one of those Hollywood heroes, stereotypical type. You know? Be a real hero. Don't yell and scream and do all that stuff. Don't do any yelling. Be quiet, be strong, and be strong enough to be gentle. Understand, you know, a lot of advice. And he said, good luck. So I went to the audition, and the first few lines out were obviously a leader. It wasn't like Batman or any of these other stereotype leader lines. He had significance in what he was saying. And so Larry's voice just came out with this calm, strong, deep resolution. And I said, I like this in my brain. I've never heard a hero like this. This would be great if we got the part. Oh, man. I found out a few weeks later that I did get the part. I found out I got like Ironhide and another character. I dished it to Sir. And when I saw the actual animation, the character was so huge, and I thought, well, maybe I should make him a little bigger to coordinate between size and stuff like that. So there were a lot of times when I would give commands, and we would all have such fun in the room anyway. I remember there was one day when I was was just screwing around. And I read one of the lines of John Wayne. Okay, kid, let's take them to Missouri. So there were times when we all messed around and doing, you know, impersonations of other actors, you know, the big stars, and see if we could sneak them in. That was a lot of fun doing that. Did that answer the question? I go off for so many, you know, minutes that I forget where I am. You know, it's kind of strange. Oh yeah, San Antonio. See. Yeah.
We have another question right back here. Yes, ma'am.
I have an in-question character, question. I have an in-character question for Optimus. It was an idea I found online several years ago, and of course, a lot of people came up with their own ideas of what Optimus's reaction would be, since they never could ask him themselves. But for the G1 fans, if anyone remembers the episode where poor Optimus got decapitated and his body was reconstructed into an alligator, I would like to know Optimus's reaction if he ever saw, as I nicknamed him, Shark Spark, come back due to one of Wheeljack's brilliant ideas.
Did that actually happen? Where am I? I'll talk to you later.
I'm sure football star Nick Sanchez has something more to contribute.
Actually, I was just about to ask what you first thought of when you thought you'd be voicing the truck, but you there was a chance for that. Actually, I'll give my question to him because he's been holding his hand up for a while. I'm sorry.
Maybe he's just showing off the guns or something. I don't know. Yes, sir.
Hey, Chris from TFW 2005. Quick question for you. Well, two-parter. First of all, would you be willing to say hi to my TFW fans on the website? Secondly, what role have you auditioned for that you didn't get?
I like that one. What roles did you not get, Mr. Cullen?
That's a tough one. Because I used to audition all the time. And I got tired of waiting for the phone to ring. So if you imagine in an actor's life, you know, his last job is his last job. And you have to go out and knock on doors. Your agent will call you up and say, well, you're going here today, you're going there today, and you're going here today. These are not jobs, these are auditions. And you do that for thousands and thousands of miles on your car. And you get lucky. And you get a job that makes it all worthwhile. I